Breaking the news. Russia strikes Ukraine's Zhytomyr region with drones and missiles, killing a child. This happened on December 23, 2025. This isn't just a headline. It's a catastrophic strategic pivot we need to understand. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today, we're going to cover the massive air assault launched by Russia. We're taking a deep dive into the source material surrounding this.
We really are. We're dissecting an attack that targeted not just military sites, but civilian life across at least 13 regions of Ukraine. The numbers are just staggering. We're talking over 650 drones and more than 30 missiles, all deployed in a single coordinated wave.
And the immediate detail, the one that just forces you to reckon with the stakes, is heartbreaking. The confirmed death of a young child born in 2021 in the Zhytomyr region. Doctors fought, but they couldn't save the child's life. That single tragedy, it just defines the whole backdrop here.
It truly sets the context. This wasn't a precision strike. It was a comprehensive attack designed to maximize suffering right before the holidays. President Zelensky, he put it perfectly. He said the target was literally all infrastructure of life. Energy grids, housing, essential services, forcing power cuts everywhere.
That scale demands immediate analysis. So our mission for this deep dive is exactly that. First, we'll unpack the horrific human cost. Then we'll get into the strategic shift, how this high-volume assault interacts with Ukraine's evolving air defense. We've got some fascinating data on that from the Air War Monitor. And finally, we connect the dots between this military escalation and the ongoing diplomatic deadlock. There are some surprising reports on the information warfare inside the Kremlin. Okay, let's unpack this immediately.
Let's. And we have to start with the grim accounting from the local military administrations from the morning of December 23rd. The reports, they paint a very, very clear picture of just indiscriminate targeting.
Starting with those details from the Zhytomyr region, we're seeing destruction from fragments of cruise missiles, kamikaze drones, hitting civilian businesses, residential buildings. 6 people injured at first, 2 of them children, and that culminated in the tragic loss of that toddler. The indiscriminate nature is just stark.
And moving across the country, the pattern just repeats. In the Khmelnytsky region, a man born in 1953 was killed. And critically, these strikes, they weren't just about direct casualties. They immediately caused power outages. It just reinforces that goal of infrastructure sabotage.
We saw significant casualties around the capital, too. In the Kiev region's Vyshhorod district, a woman, born in 1949, died in a fire after a strike. 3 others had shrapnel wounds, including a teenage girl born in 2009.
And even in Kyiv city itself.
Yeah, in the Sviatuzky district, drone debris fell near a residential building, injuring up to 5 people, one of them a 16-year-old. When you just list out those ages, a toddler, a teenager, the elderly, it just confirms this was purely about civilian targets.
Exactly. And that strategic objective is clearest when we look at the infrastructure. The president's description targeting all infrastructure of life, it's completely borne out by the damage reports.
Just look at the Odessa region in the south. The strikes there were incredibly broad. They hit port facilities, transport hubs, industrial sites, energy infrastructure, and residential areas all at once.
The physical damage is extensive. A civilian cargo ship, a warehouse, and a shocking 122 private homes, plus 3 apartment buildings, all with window and roof damage.
The intention is so clear, isn't it? It's about dismantling the state's ability to sustain life through the winter.
Absolutely, and you can see that with the hits in a place like Lviv Oblast, way out to the west, where a critical energy facility was struck by combat drones, or in Shuska, in the Sumy region, where a critical infrastructure facility was completely destroyed. That means a total loss of electricity and heat for so many people.
It's hard to process the sheer widespread shock this causes, especially the timing. As Zelensky highlighted, doing this right before Christmas, when people just want to be with their loved ones.
It sends an extremely clear strategic signal.
Right. The signal is that Russia intends to break the civilian population's will through overwhelming, predictable violence at the worst possible moments.
It is a profound strategic challenge. And, that brings us to the core of the air war. How does Ukraine's defense system hold up against these massive coordinated waves? This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, let's shift from the immediate damage to the broader context revealed in that November 2025 data from the Ukraine Air War Monitor. The sources show that Ukraine's integrated air defense system, their IADIS, is not just surviving, it's adapting at a really extraordinary pace.
It is. I mean, if you just look at the raw scale of the Russian campaign in November, the deployment of these expensive long-range weapons was still incredibly high. We're talking 5,444 long-range drones, 108 cruise missiles, and 106 ballistic missiles. And that number for ballistic missiles, which are notoriously hard to shoot down, it's one of the highest we've seen.
They're clearly trying to maintain constant pressure, just hoping to deplete Ukraine's interceptor stocks.
Exactly. But here's the genuinely surprising part from the sources. Despite that volume, Ukrainian interception rates improved significantly in November. Drone interception rose to 84% from 80% the month before.
Which is a solid improvement.
It is. But the truly remarkable jump was against those ballistic missiles, things like the Iskander-M and the hypersonic Kinzhal. Interception rates there jumped from about 15% in October to about 30% in November.
Okay, wait. 30% still sounds low, especially given the enormous cost of systems like the Patriot that you need for these targets. Is the source saying that investment is actually paying off with that number?
That's the key question. And the data suggests, yes, it's finally reaching a critical mass. Because the rate jumped from 15 to 30%, the total unintercepted explosive payload, which is what really matters for destruction, it decreased by 25%.
So it's about the rate of improvement.
That's it. Even a small increase in effectiveness against these high payload weapons translates directly into saved lives and preserved infrastructure. It's working.
And this effectiveness is clearly fueling this frantic technological arms race on the Ukrainian side. They're innovating so fast, especially against those cheap Shahed drones. We're seeing new systems, like the Octopus interceptor drone.
The Octopus is fascinating. It's specifically designed to be resistant to electronic warfare, EW, and has a simple launch mechanism that's crucial for mobile defense. And then you have the Sting interceptor drone. It's only around $2,000 unit, so it's a really low-cost countermeasure.
And what's the effectiveness on that?
It's estimated at 60 to 90% against those Jurain 2, the Shahed 136 drones. It shows you don't always need a multi-million-dollar missile to take out a $20,000 drone. You just need volume and smart tech.
And Ukraine is pushing the frontier of electronic warfare itself. The sources mention systems like Lima for spoofing Kinzhal missiles. For our listener, what exactly does that mean?
Spoofing in this case means the defense system is feeding the attacking missile false GPS coordinates. It essentially convinces the missile's own navigation that its target is 200 kilometers off course.
So you're not shooting it down, you're just making it get lost.
You're neutralizing the expensive weapon without firing an expensive interceptor. It's an incredibly sophisticated countermeasure.
But the Russian threat isn't static either. The sources are reporting a frightening evolution on their side. One downed Shahed drone was found carrying an R-60 air-to-air missile.
And that is a major tactical shift. A normal drone carries a simple bomb for a ground target. Putting an R-60 on a Shahed suggests Russia is now trying to use these cheap drone swarms to actually hunt and destroy Ukrainian airborne air defense assets.
So planes or helicopters that Ukraine uses to shoot down other drones.
Exactly. It turns the simple Shahed into a multi-role threat.
Plus, the Jurain 2 drones are now using modified communication systems. What does that do?
It allows for real-time human control, which makes them much harder to predict or jam.
So if we connect all this back to the December 23rd strike, the conclusion is pretty clear. Russia is reacting to Ukraine's improving defense. This attack was an attempt to just overwhelm this rapidly adapting I-80s with sheer volume.
It was a combined high-intensity wave of everything they have. They were just hoping that enough catastrophic damage gets through, despite the better interception rates.
That military intensity brings us directly to the diplomatic stage. And what's so striking is the complete contradiction between the violence of that day and the diplomatic maneuvering that was happening at the same time.
Precisely. Senior U.S. and Ukrainian officials had just wrapped up a round of significant meetings in Miami. President Zelensky actually reported that 90% of the first developments in negotiations are complete. They have a concrete 20-point peace plan.
A plan that includes confidential security guarantees, right?
Yes, and detailed commitments for post-war military support for Ukraine. But at the same time, the sources confirm Russia explicitly rejected a U.S.-proposed temporary Christmas ceasefire.
Which was meant to be a simple good faith signal. That rejection speaks volumes.
It does. And Russia's deputy foreign minister, Sergei Ryabkov, he made their position non-negotiable. He demanded a permanent ceasefire only if Ukraine first guarantees the results of the 2022 illegal referendums.
Just recognizing the annexation of their own territory.
Right. And permanently abandoning any aspirations to join NATO. So the starting point for talks is basically Ukraine accepting Russia's military victory.
And this hardened position isn't operating in a vacuum. It's informed by this really distorted environment inside the Kremlin. The sources shed some light on how false information is impacting Putin's own strategy.
And what's alarming is how systemic the deception is. Reports indicate key military officials, including the Chief of General Staff Gerasimov, regularly give Putin what sources call a rosy picture.
They're inflating Ukrainian casualties and just totally downplaying Russian failures.
Exactly. It contrasts sharply with the more sober, realistic reports he gets from, say, his economic and intelligence sectors.
So this culture of lying at the military top has a double effect. Putin pushes these same exaggerated claims publicly. That's cognitive warfare directed at Ukraine. But
Internally, these fabricated reports confirm his own belief that Russia can win a long war of attrition. He thinks his strategy is working because the only data he seems to trust is telling him it is, regardless of the reality on the ground.
it's a dangerous feedback loop.
It is. And while the air war dominates the headlines, we also have to acknowledge these parallel hidden conflicts happening. Just before the December 23rd strike, on December 22nd, we saw the likely Ukrainian assassination of Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov.
He was the chief of the Russian General Staff's Operational Training Department. A car bomb, right in Moscow City.
Right. And it highlights this pattern of neutralizing high-value targets far behind the front lines. It's a strategic effort to dismantle the Russian command structure where they feel safest.
But on the flip side, there's evidence of internal Russian conflict, too. The assassination of Stanislav Orlov, a former brigade leader in occupied Crimea on December 4th.
That was likely carried out by Russian security services. It suggests deep internal strife, probably tied to conflicts over arms trafficking or organized crime. The conflict isn't just focused outward.
So bringing all these threads together for you, our deep dive really reveals a complex picture.
On one hand, the December 23rd air assault underscores this stark reality. The intentional targeting of civilian life is a military objective for Russia, and they'll expend massive resources to achieve it.
But conversely, Ukraine is showing significant progress in technological air defense. They're using new, low-cost drone interceptors like Octopus and Sting and implementing these sophisticated EW systems like Lima that can actively spoof high-end missiles.
But these military realities, the destruction and the defensive innovation, are playing out against this backdrop of hardened Russian diplomatic demands and a Kremlin decision-making process that's just fueled by systemic misinformation.
So the military leverage directly informs the diplomatic outcome. The U.S.-backed peace plan, it includes secret security clauses, details on post-war support, all stuff that needs U.S. Senate ratification. But we've seen this before. Russia has a history of violating international agreements. The Budapest Memorandum is the most painful example.
And that raises the really important question for you to think about. What is the true enforceable value of any written security guarantee for Ukraine that doesn't involve decisive, long-term military leverage, especially against a party that has proven it will disregard any treaty it signs? That is the structural challenge that's going to define the future of European security.
That is a provocative and essential thought. It reminds us that strategy and technological adaptation are often the true foundation for any lasting peace. Thank you for going on this deep dive with us. We encourage you to explore these concepts, integrated air defense systems, EW spoofing, and cognitive warfare, to really grasp the full complexity of this evolving conflict.
You've been listening to Defense Report, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.